Welcome to the Gladden Longevity Podcast with Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, where our passion is helping you to become an age hacker. On this show, we want to help you optimize your life energy, longevity, health, and human performance with impactful and actionable information by answering 4 questions. How good can we be? How do we make 100 the new 30? How do we live well beyond 120? And how do we live young for a lifetime? Now, here's today's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and as always, we're here answering big questions like how good can you be? How do we make 100 the new 30? How do we live well beyond 120? How do we live young for a lifetime? And how do we basically cultivate a 300-year-old mind? And today, I have the pleasure of welcoming to the podcast a guy named Josh Dech, who has a really interesting story. He has a large podcast following. He's an internationally recognized health coach around particularly Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. But you're going to hear a very interesting conversation about gut health, autoimmunity, detox. We really kind of unravel this knot in a deep way, and I think you're going to find it a really interesting and informative conversation. There's some real good tidbits, some information there that's very actionable, some companies we talk about for testing and things like that. So give this a listen, and I think you'll find it very useful. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and as always, we are here having interesting conversations. And today I'm speaking with Josh Dech, D-E-C-H, and Josh has an interesting background that has to do with really the gut and autoimmunity and a number of other topics that we'll probably cruise into. So, Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Jeff, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation.
Good. So, maybe tell the audience a little bit about your story. How did you get interested in the gut? Not everybody ends up there, but you did, obviously. And why don't you walk us through how you arrived there?
It's one of those pain to purpose stories I'm sure we're all sick of hearing by now, and it's what makes us good at what we do. Yeah. I've had gut issues my entire life, as long as I can remember. I've had issues in my joints. I remember back to 3rd grade, running in the playground and my knees hurting. And I wasn't really aware of what was causing it till I was about 11 years old. My mom's always had gut issues. And she'd go upstairs, she'd have gas, bloat, pain, she'd lay on her left-hand side. And eventually the gas would pass, it would go away. When I was 11 years old, I remember there was a night after baseball practice, went over to McDonald's because that was our thing. And we got whatever it is we got. She went upstairs to lay on her left-hand side. But for some reason, the pain just wasn't going away. It was actually getting worse. And I watched my stepdad go upstairs. I was sitting outside the bedroom door looking in, and it was dark, dimly lit. Smelled like farts. And he sits on the edge of the bed with her. He says, "We need to go to the hospital." And she refused. He came back half hour later. She was breaking out into cold sweats. He says, "We are going." He picks her up, puts her in the car, and took her in. And the surgeon said, had we not done emergency surgery tonight, 2 to 3 hours later, she probably would have died at home. Okay. What ended up happening was her bowel wore out over many, many years, decades of dealing with this consistent bloating, constipation, pain she was having. And kind of like your heel wearing out when you're wearing shoes without socks and it starts to rub till it gets red and blister and bleed. That happened to her gut and it perforated. Okay. So she popped a little hole. She was leaking bowel contents, stool toxins into her abdominal cavity, and she went septic. She had emergency bowel resection done that day. They took out 12 inches of colon, put in a bag. And over the years, she had her gallbladder removed. She had a total of 2 feet of bowel, mesh put in, the works. My dad had gut issues. I've had them to the point where when I was in my early 20s, my back was covered in acne, top to bottom, not an inch without acne on it, down my shoulders, down my arms to my wrists, up my neck, on my chest. I was having severe joint pain. I lost about 30 pounds, give or take. I had 15 bowel movements a day, blood, mucus in my stool, panic attacks, anxiety drove me to suicidal thoughts where I almost went through with it. My brain was so messed up because of my gut. And I was able to correct and reverse that to where I am today. And I love my life. I feel amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
I was never depressed. My gut inflamed my brain and it made me feel like I was.
Yeah. Well, that's a remarkable turnaround. So, I mean, it sounds like you have a genetic predisposition for Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, some kind of something going on there, and probably some autoimmune things related to that with the joint pain and the other stuff. So you want to tell us kind of how you unraveled that knot and what you found as you unraveled it?
Well, at the time, I didn't know any better, so I had to bring somebody in who was much smarter than myself to unravel it for me.
Mm-hmm.
But what we had learned through this process, we know your gut is the center of everything. There's
Sure.
nothing in your body, from a hair on your head to your fingernails to your sleep patterns and your personality, that are not connected back to your gut. What ended up happening, we did some testing and that really dove into it. I had massive candida fungal overgrowths where it was growing up through my esophagus into my mouth and down from my small intestine where they usually live all the way to the large intestine. I was fully infected. It was coming out and pushing through my skin. So it was fungus causing acne. And I also had parasites. They were plugging up my liver. On top of that, at the time when I got sick and lost that 30 plus pounds, I was also on anabolic steroids. I was a strength athlete competing. So my liver was extra bogged down by the injections and the pills. And it was just the perfect circle.
Yeah. So just so the audience understands, so yeast overgrowth in the gut is a thing. We tend to see it pretty frequently. A lot of times it'll be in the small bowel, but it can be throughout the entire bowel, if you will. In fact, the entire GI tract, into the mouth, into the esophagus, etc. Even people that have like fungus in their toenails or fingernails or things like that, they really have a reservoir of this, right? It's not just enough to treat the nails. They have a reservoir of this in their gut. It's really kind of a systemic reservoir that they have. And the yeast, we see that people that drink more alcohol tend to have higher amounts of candida or yeast overgrowth. Certainly people that eat a lot of sugar are more prone to it as well. Diabetics or insulin resistant people that are on that path to diabetes. What was it in your case, do you think? Was it something other than that, or was it related to that in some way? Or
For me, I think it came from early years. So looking back, there was probably a fair bit of stress in my life. Once I've sort of unpacked things with a therapist, after my parents' divorce, we went from financial stability to straight poverty, where my mom would send me to friends' houses to eat because there's no food at home. And, that's sort of where we grew up. And around 12, 13 years old, I think it was 13, I got into high school, got in with the wrong crowd. I was dealing drugs by age 13. I started a business with 100% profit margins. I shoplifted and then sold it out of my locker in school. And so there was just a lot of that, involvement with the police and just a lot of the wrong crowds. So between that, I was also a high level athlete. I was wrestling. I was doing gymnastics and martial arts nonstop. So I was eating McDonald's.
It's remarkable that you could be a high performance athlete with all that going on, right? I mean,
it wasn't going on at the time. This is what caused it. Right? Like I was performing high level and I was like, well, I got to keep up my calories. I counted calories, not chemicals. So I was eating McDonald's 4 days a week because it was 3,000 calories. I was downing 18 plus eggs a day, a liter of milk and cottage cheese. I didn't know I had sensitivities to the dairy, and that just eroded my gut. And that's what I believe laid the foundation for all this to come in.
Okay. So, so this is interesting, right? So, I think one of the things that this highlights is one of the things about diet itself. And if you listen to anybody about diet advice, it's almost guaranteed that people will be talking about the health of this food or the goodness of that food or the badness of this food or this other food, right? In actual fact, there isn't a good or bad food. There's just a food that's good or bad for you. And you really have to start to understand that from the standpoint of your own immune system, your own food sensitivities, your own digestive patterns, and that sort of thing. And so it's really so important to actually, before you decide that a food is good or bad, is to actually deconstruct your own system, whether you have insulin resistance, whether you have yeast overgrowth, whether you have food sensitivities, whether you have Crohn's disease, all these different things. If you figure that out first, then all of a sudden it becomes pretty clear. Oh, well, eggs are not particularly good for me. Dairy is not particularly good for me. So gluten's probably not good for anybody, but there are some people that tolerate it better than others, let's say. But it's an interesting thing. If you're struggling with your gut, the first thing to do is not to jump on a diet. The first thing to do is actually deconstruct the problem, right? What is actually going on, right? Do the stool test, do the food sensitivity test, or maybe you're not digesting your food properly. Maybe we see this all the time, right? It's healthy people come in here and they're not absorbing fat. They're not absorbing protein. They're, it's really wild what you find when you actually look. And so I think it's really important to deconstruct this. Now, you didn't have the benefit of any of that initially, but apparently you started working with somebody that started to unravel that for you. So
that's right.
Walk us through that a little bit further. So what happened?
Well, I had to find some help. So I started reaching out to people who worked at the gym who I knew were in, quote, health coaching or studying nutrition. And they were able to identify the candida and the issues. And they started running me on basic protocols. But as it developed, it actually took me years because I didn't realize at the time they were missing critical steps that I now know today that I use for my clients. There was no drainage support. And if we think of detoxing as collecting your trash, drainage is bringing it out to the curb. You have 7 main drainage pathways. So your liver, gallbladder, and bile ducts are the biggest ones we see clogged up when we're dealing with bowel issues. Mine was sluggish from the steroids, from the junk food, from the stress, from everything, from the candida. Then, of course, we have your sinuses, your lymphatic system. I've had sinus issues for years. My lymphatic system, I was having trouble even sweating. So whether I was exercising or moving, my body wasn't getting rid of stuff, right? Bowels, kidneys, and bladder. This is how things get out.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to move things out of your system. And what they did was say, well, let's kill everything that's overgrown to get rid of it. But my trash has to go somewhere.
You had no way to get rid of that. Right.
I had I was evicting tenants from the building, but my doors were all locked. So they just moved around, got really upset and peed on the rug. And so now I've got infections in other places.
Yeah.
I started getting headaches and my bowels worsened until they improved. But I should never have had to have gone through that extra slump had there been proper foundations laid for drainage, immune support, cellular wellness.
Yeah, this is part of the deconstruction process also, is to look at detox pathways, drainage pathways, all of this, because if you're not doing that, then you can compound the problem, right? With doing the right thing, you can actually compound the problem, which is kind of what you were doing, right?
So I stressed my immune system like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So walk us through the drainage, sort of protocols that you utilize to help people with liver, gallbladder, kidneys, sinuses, lymphatic drainage, etc.
I'd love to. And just to preface, when we're getting into drainage, we use this. I specialize in Crohn's colitis, which, by the way, are very reversible conditions, contrary to what your doctor says, and even severe IBS. And drainage, liver and gallbladder drainage, these are pertinent for everyone. If you have a bowel issue, a symptom, or a diagnosis, you need these. So what it often looks like, number one, we can start by binding because there's a lot of residual floaters. So whether it be mycotoxins, so mold, or biotoxins, which are being produced by your bacteria and inflammatory products, we often want to capture some of those. And we can start with a very low basic dose, get you drinking more water and just moving your body more. That's going to start catching the residual. But then you have to get the stuff that's buried. So I think of it this way. If you have a cup filled with water and there's something at the bottom, and you reach your hand in through that cup to grab the thing at the bottom, it overflows. You have to empty out some of that cup first before you can reach to the bottom of it. And that's what we have to do by binding and draining before you can remove all this junk. So that drainage protocol, it might look like red light. I wouldn't jump into most people lymphatic massage right away, but basic movement, walking, stretching routines, getting your body to move your lymphatic system around. But priority, we want to support the liver, gallbladder, and bile ducts. And this is going to be supplements like TUDCA, TUDCA, or NAC, that's N-acetylcysteine, milk thistle, even glutathione, but NAC is it's a precursor to glutathione, but it depends on where you want to go. And we support your liver to get it moving. You can use things like phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine to help with your brain cell membranes, which again helps with exiting the body. And so once we can support this adequately, we get you sweating more often and sweating more readily, then we've emptied the glass enough to really reach our hand into the bottom and pull that infection out. Because if you think about it, there's only 3 reasons, Jeff, that I've distilled it down to in my career is why people get sick. Toxins of some kind. High blood sugar, high stress, mold, heavy metals, alcohol, preservatives, chemicals, pesticides. They're all toxins. The second reason is deficiencies. Deficiencies of sunlight, fresh air, exercise, basic nutrients, vitamins, minerals. The third is microbial imbalances or infections. Overgrowth of candida or undergrowth of core bacteria, keystone microbes, infections like parasites, viruses, whatever. There's no other reason we get sick. And so we have to remove those infections or those insults to the body. And that's how we can continue after drainage to proceed through the healing process.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. Yeah, I like the approach. And then do you move into areas like lymphatic massage and things like that to help people as well? Or tell us about that.
Yeah, we can. And I think it's all about tolerance. Let's go back to the cup analogy. It's a cup filled with water. You want to drain it out slowly and controlled. If you dump too much too quickly, the paper towel can't absorb, you make a mess all over the floor. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do, drainage, you're slowly shaking that cup to get a little bit of water out at a time. But if you shake too much too fast, you spill everywhere. Yeah. And so when it comes down to lymphatic, sometimes lymphatic massage will make people sicker because that's the most congested system, depending on why and how they're sick. If you're somebody, I talked to a client yesterday, she puts on like a baseball cap and she has an indent in her forehead for hours. Her socks leaving in, she's not an overweight woman, she's quite lean, but socks leave an imprint around her ankles. Her lymphatic system is not draining fluid. So for her at that stage, right at the beginning, to go through and do lymphatic massage, when she's not getting things out, she's just going to move them around. She'll probably get migraines and even the flu, muscle aches, joint pain as those toxins immobilize, then settle elsewhere. So for me, sweating first to really push things out, and gentle movement before I manually press things out like a massage.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So are you a fan of using saunas in this context, or how do you feel about that?
Totally. I think saunas are fine if you can tolerate them. Start with 10 minutes. Get it heated up to a point where you finally break a sweat for 5 or 10, brush off, go shower. Increase it as you need. One of the challenges we see is a lot of people go in and jump into red light saunas right away, and they can do too much too quickly. Yeah. Red light penetrates a lot deeper into the cells, stimulates mitochondrial function, helps drainage and detoxing and all this. But again, like lymphatic, if you're not ready for that powerful of a system, I recommend you're better off going to sweat outside in the shade, surrounded by green things. That green actually reflects infrared light like 100-fold or something ridiculous. So being shaded in a green area is going to get you all the nice infrared light and allow you to sweat without really being focused in a sauna that can make you sick.
Nice. I like that a lot. So that would mean not doing it at the beach if you're going to be reflecting green, right? So the park next to the beach. Yeah.
And if you're as pale as I am, you're reflecting too much sunlight anyways.
There you go. Yeah, there are ways to fix that, quite honestly. So, yeah, very interesting. So tell us a little bit more about advanced detox things that you do. Are there things that are even more advanced once you people are able to tolerate it, or what does that look like?
Advancing detox. And again, detoxing and drainage are 2 stages. So once you've opened up those exit pathways, so liver, gallbladder, bile ducts, lymphatic, skin, sinuses, bowels, and bladder or kidneys, once those are opened and things are moving freely, then you can really begin detoxing more, because while you're collecting trash, it will naturally make its way out of your body. And so increasing that really looks like 2 things. You increase the dosage of whatever supports you're using, whether that's broad spectrum binders like bentonite clay, zeolite, humic fulvic acid, chlorella, modified citrus pectin, whatever it is you're dosing, you can increase the doses. Number 2, you increase the interventions. You sweat more often, you sweat more regularly, you exercise and move more. Whether it's acupuncture, lymphatic massage, you're increasing your interventions. Where a lot of people get tripped up, they continue these interventions and they go, I'm feeling better, so this must be my solution. But once they stop, they feel terrible again. And what it is, it's kind of like there's a fire burning and you constantly pour water on top of the fire, but you never turn off the gas leak. So we go through drainage, we go through detoxing, but at no point do we really fully actually turn off or get rid of the problem. You don't correct the fungal overgrowth. Maybe there's mold in your home, which affects 70% of US homes, and you're constantly re-inoculating your body with these toxins. So you keep going back and needing more drainage, more binding. And now you're basically on plant-based medication, right? Managing your symptoms with supplements.
Yep. So with the infections, do you have testing that you do to look for the parasites and look for the mold and things like that? Or I know that we do testing here, but I don't know what you do in your world. Or do you just assume that they're there, or how do you go about that?
Well, a little bit of both. So in the Crohn's colitis space, mold is present 70 to 80% of the time, and so are parasites. And parasites and mold go hand in hand. We know that one opens a door for the other. So we can assume that they're there, but for the sake of doing our due diligence and being good practitioners, we always want to know. So we operate through what's called functional blood chemistry. We can look at blood and certain markers to know what else is going on. We can look at BUN and creatinine and different measurements within blood. Now, it's not my specialty. I've got a guy who does that. But we can look at the blood, which tells a broader spectrum. Not just are you in normal ranges, because what your doctor does to identify normal is they take all the blood from your entire city or your state, and they look at this and go, here's where the average population sits. If you're within there, you're normal. But 92% of the population is not metabolically healthy. Therefore, if you're normal, by definition, you're actually already sick. So we want to look for optimal ranges. And then from there, we look at symptoms. Because the truth is, Jeff, I mean, parasite testing at best is probably 40% accurate. Your doctor's is like 99% inaccurate. So we have to look at symptoms. And there's a huge array of symptoms we can find. We can look at blood work, which can help identify parasites. We can look at stool samples. You may not catch parasites, but certain markers can show us parasites in your stool. Certain depletions of bacteria like Akkermansia, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii can often indicate certain species of parasites. Sometimes eosinophils. So you can find it in stool as eosinophil activation protein or eosinophils in blood. Those are elevated about 20, 30% of the time.
That's right.
We look for psoriasis, eczema, skin issues, trouble sleeping, drooling in your sleep, grinding your teeth, allergies, food sensitivities. There's 50, 60 supplements we can tie back to parasites. And it's kind of like having a language, you know. I can give you a dictionary and it means nothing until you put those words in context to create sentences with meaning. Then we can understand each other. And that's sort of how we have to look at symptoms, because parasites overlap with mold. They overlap with candida or clostridia and other dysbiosis. And we have to be very contextual in the way we look at your symptoms, but symptoms are priority for us.
So what's the actual regimen that you use to actually heal yourself here, or used in conjunction with other practitioners that were helping you? What did you end up doing?
So way back in the day, we're going back 10 years or more now, it was drainage support, liver, gallbladder, and then sweating. A lot of just active passive sweating.
Exactly what you did, liver and gallbladder. What did you actually do?
We're pulling back the curtain here. Let me see if I can remember here, Jeff. So TUDCA for sure, milk thistle, general liver support. So Genation, dandelion. Oh boy, we're really peeling back here. I would say that any sort of over-the-counter liver supplement is probably a good place to go. But I'm a huge fan, again, of TUDCA. Really mobilizes bile. It helps restore the liver cells, anti-inflammatory. It's immunomodulating. That's huge.
TUDCA is an actual interesting molecule. It's actually a metabolite of a bile salt, actually. And it has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties. It's also has an impact on longevity as well as gut health.
Which is amazing.
So we like TUDCA. It's a very cool molecule. If you're not familiar with it, if you're listening to this, it's TUDCA, TUDCA. In fact, if you had to pick, I guess if you had to pick one thing, just randomly off the shelf, that might be the one that you picked. But it's pretty interesting, right? So it's a good thing. Okay, and then so with that, your symptoms got 20% better, 40% better, 60% better? What actually happened?
What I started finding was my energy was improving first, because my body was so sluggish. Everything was toxified. So between that, methylated B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, molybdenum, these cofactors to detox enzymes and getting your body cleaned out, I was able to sort of empty my glass. So I wasn't constantly overflowing. I noticed my moods began to stabilize a bit. I wasn't so anxious all the time. My joints were a little better. My energy improved. Once I was there, I was then able to move on to the next phase, which was going to be killing off a lot of these microbes that were overgrown, rebalancing my gut. The challenge is...
So let me interrupt you right there just for a second to get to the killing off, because just so the audience understands also, we use a genetic test called IntelliXDNA. I think we've done a podcast with them. I know I did a doctor's talk with them. I'll probably do a podcast again on a couple of things. But IntelliXDNA is a company out of Austin that looks at detox pathways. And if you're curious to know where you need support, if you look at some of these genetic SNPs, you can actually get some insight into, oh, I see, I don't do a very good job with, making glutathione, for example, or I don't do a very good job with heavy metals. I do a pretty good job with organic things to get out, and that sort of stuff. So if you're looking to refine your thoughts on this, just doing their sort of executive panel will give you their detox SNPs, if you will, along with a lot of other things that are useful. So I'll just throw that in there. But we find that to be useful to kind of customize where we think people are going to need the most help. So, yeah.
I think that's brilliant. And it depends on who you ask. I know even some practitioners that I've worked with or that I even have on my team will say, well, DNA is not so important. Others swear by it. And I guess my opinion on it is that it's so vital to know where your body might be lacking so you can lean into those weaknesses. But at the end of the day, if you're not cellularly stressed, toxically loaded, if you're not having dysbiosis issues and all that, then your DNA is not going to be faulty. But especially in the beginning and long-term stages, when you get sick, you know where to lean on to give your body a bit of that. It's kind of like wearing orthotics. Like, well, I have a bit of a limp here. I got one leg that's a bit shorter. So this will kind of be preventative. It'll help me get corrected faster. I'm all about that. And that's where you want to go.
Maybe an analogy is you've got a house, right? And it's built on a foundation and the foundation of the genetics. And if you know where the inherent weaknesses are relative to, let's say, heavy rains or high winds or something like that, you can sort of reinforce those genes. Or actually what happens is with the right support, you can actually modify the way those genes are expressed to make them more supportive, right? And that's really what we're going for. But if you don't know what's in your foundation, then it's difficult to know. You can throw the kitchen sink at it. That's one approach, or you can try to be a little more precise about it. So yeah,
I love that. Get targeted and get intentional. That's what's important.
Exactly. So then you got to a point where you were feeling better energy, and then were there other things that you did to actually settle down the actual acne and the gut and the diarrhea and all the other things that you were kind of talking about earlier on? Were there additional things that you did, or was that enough to sort of take care of it? Or where did you then diagnose the parasites and the yeast overgrowth and the bacterial overgrowth and start to kill that off? Is that the sequence, or what happened?
Well, so after drainage and after basic support, getting things out of my system, the next stage I took, I had to change my diet because again, I was focused on calories. Right? I was eating boxes of cereal and all kinds of junk. So, we got a new flavor of Trix or Cinnamon Toast Crunch, this and that. And so I pick it up and that'd be a snack for me. But we're talking grains, processed sugars, glyphosate, all kinds of garbage that I didn't realize how big I was a personal trainer, count macros, right? I got my macro balance, I'm fine. And it made me very sick. So I did have to change the insult. It's like to empty the bathtub, you got to turn off the tap. And that's what I had to do first. So once I changed the diet over and I was no longer compounding and making my own issues, then I was able to go into biofilms. When there's a lot of biofilms are produced as a protective layer, they also help them transport, move around. It's kind of like a sludgy, slimy mucus.
It's like a film. You're talking biofilm, but it's almost like a mucus film, as you can almost imagine it, right? If you're listening to
like snot.
It's almost like snot that kind of lines, a skin, an internal skin, a mucosal membrane, right? So
that's exactly it. And biofilm's not bad. I mean, we need it. But when you have overgrowth of bad guys creating too much biofilms, you can't really go in to kill them all off. It's like dropping a bomb on top of a bomb shelter. You got to open the hatch and clean things out first and get everything moving. But as you go to open up these biofilms, because they are a layer, they hold on to toxins, whether it's endotoxins produced by your microbes, if it's mycotoxins from colonizing mold, byproducts like urine and feces, even from certain worms that might be in your gut. Once you open those biofilms, you release them. So you also have to bind and capture. So it's kind of a put on the gas, pull off a little bit, throttle on, throttle off, so you see what your tolerances are. And already I had less junk in my system. It didn't have to push through my skin. My acne started calming down right away. My joints got better right away because there wasn't so much circulating. Yeah. And then I went in with all these microbial killers, whether it was probiotics or antimicrobial plant-based. There's a supplement I used through Nutridyne, for example, called, was it Nutricidin? And what we focused on there, it's clove, oregano, thyme, black walnut, all these antifungals, antimicrobials that
Right.
come in and kill things off. But again, when you kill a microbe, it's like popping a balloon full of confetti. Now you
That's
got a
right.
mess to clean up. So if you kill too much too fast, again, you overflood your system. So
That's right.
it really is a titrated, go slow type of process.
That's right. Yeah, you can end up with diarrhea if you go too fast, is what we found, basically.
Or
Which
the
is why
flu, or hospitalize yourself even.
Sure.
I've seen
Well,
that
sure.
before.
Yeah, that's right. If you're that sensitive to it, for sure. So using the binders, taking it at a measured pace, taking some of these things like every third day, not every day, or every something like that, right? Just to
Totally.
kind of allow your body to kind of digest the process almost. Do you have particular biofilm busters that you found to be particularly useful or helpful that you like?
There's a lot of them out there. One that I've leaned on the most over the years is Claire Labs Interphase Plus. I found it to
Okay.
be really nice. It's got a great blend of these what we call proteolytic enzymes, and they have an interphase, and their interphase plus, I believe, is the one that also contains EDTA, which can work as a chelator to capture other toxins, heavy metals, etc. So it depends on what you need. Some people can get away with just serapeptase or nattokinase, something like
Right.
that, but we always want to go slow. It's really easy to throw way too many enzymes in to break these biofilms down way too quickly. So I think we get in such a rush because we're desperate. I was sick. I was depressed and suicidal. My joints hurt. I was having panic attacks. And I mean, God bless my wife, we're not divorced. But at the time, it's surprising we weren't because I was so off the rails.
Right.
And had I gone too much too quickly, I would have gotten very sick. And so in these desperate situations, it's important to understand that slow and steady will get you there. If you go too quickly out of desperation, you're likely to set yourself back and make it worse.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying. So, we started the podcast, you were talking a bit about joint pain and things like that. And we know that people that suffer from toxins, from food sensitivities, from the associated inflamed gut, the leaky gut and a leaky blood-brain barrier with brain fog. But then, also you end up with autoimmune issues, right? So you can end up with Hashimoto's, and you can end up with other autoimmune sort of scenarios. Hashimoto's is where antibodies are basically attacking your thyroid gland, and pretty much 100% of the time we find that's associated with issues going on in the gut, if you will. So you had what sounded like some autoimmune issues going on, and I know you've got some theories about autoimmunity. Do you want to talk a little bit further about autoimmunity, both for yourself and then some of your generalized notions about it?
Yeah. Autoimmunity is an interesting conversation. And we hear the word antibodies, we sort of say, oh, it's autoimmune. But there's two kinds of antibodies. Right? There's autoantibodies, which attack you, and there's antibodies, which attack other. If you think about it, let's go back to medieval times. You have a castle or a watchtower, and there's foot soldiers coming up. What do? You design an archer to be able to snipe them. It's a very specific defense against a specific type of soldier. And this is what your body does to defend itself. When it becomes autoimmune, that archer turns around and shoots the king. And so now we're attacking ourselves. And what we look at when it comes down to autoimmunity, we have to say your body's attacking yourself. I had no proof that it truly was. What it seemed like was just systemic toxicity, but it could be easily classified as autoimmune because of the severity of the conditions. You probably had ulcerative colitis. I probably did, but I never got it diagnosed.
Okay. So, well, there are ways to test for that. So
yes,
if you're listening to this and you're curious, do I have autoimmunity? There are tests that can be done to look for there are autoimmune signatures in your immune system that can be easily tested, quite honestly. So yeah, we use Vibrant America for that. Yeah.
Oh, I love Vibrant, but you'd be shocked, Jeff. Yeah. So my specialty in Crohn's colitis, you might be shocked, or maybe not at all with the expectation we have of the Western medical system. How many people come in to see me who have never had any antibodies tested, but their doctor's telling them their condition is autoimmune because of how it's characterized or classified.
Right.
And most of these cases aren't.
Right.
So to break down autoimmunity, let's lean to Crohn's colitis for a moment here, just because that's where my niche is. But let's specialize and say anything, whether it's ALS, MS, lupus, whatever it is. The three reasons we get sick: toxins, microbial imbalances, and nutrient deficiencies or basic deficiencies like sunlight, exercise. That's the reasons we get sick. For something to turn autoimmune, there are three legs to this table. We have some kind of antecedent, so like a trigger, a stressful event, many years of stress, surgery, medication, whatever it is. we have a genetic predisposition, and then we have leaky gut. Those three things are connected to nearly every autoimmune condition on the planet. And I would challenge you to maybe find one that's not.
Yeah.
So your body is a well-oiled, well-designed machine. And when you lack the resources because you're toxic, you're deficient, or you're overwhelmed with infections, and then you have genetic predispositions, you have some kind of stressful event or something that causes your body to go off with leaky gut, which gets these toxins systemic. Now you have these hyperactive immune responses. And I sort of break them down, autoimmune disease, into four main stages. The first is acute. This is where you get an infection like the flu. Like your body kicks it in a couple of days or a week and you're fine. It should do that. But when it doesn't, it then becomes chronic. So after a year or more with minimal sort of relief in your symptoms, even with medical intervention, you're still having issues, it's then classified as a chronic condition. And what happens, just like you carrying a heavy load, you get tired and more tired. And so your system, after a chronic condition develops, then it pushes into what we could classify as immune mediated. So Crohn's and colitis, these quote unquote autoimmune bowel diseases, have been declassified by the CDC, the Mayo Clinic, etc., as being immune mediated. We know they're hyperactive responses. So just like you having a stressful day, you're stuck in traffic, somebody swiped the side of your car, your boss yelled at you, you get home, then your kids are running and screaming, you blow your top. Your immune system does the same. It becomes overreactive. That's our third stage. But then the fourth stage is where we have autoimmunity or immunodeficiency, where we see certain pathways of the immune system collapsing and being unable to do their job, or your body really does begin attacking itself. And that autoimmune theory, if you want to get there, I'm actually working to challenge that because I'm on a mission to prove, it's a bold statement, someone's going to attack me for this, but I'll say with a grain of salt, I don't believe autoimmune disease exists the way we believe it does.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting statement. You want to talk about that just a little bit further? I know you kind of did in the preamble there, but you want to
I would love to.
that? Yeah.
And I'll preface, if you're listening or you, Jeff, have anybody who's got access to a lab who wants to collaborate with me on this, I'd love to run some tests. So I'll go back again to my niche, Crohn's colitis. 70% of cases of ulcerative colitis have an antibody we call p-ANCA. That's little p, capital ANCA. This stands for perinuclear anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibody. So what does that mean? It means it's an antibody that is attacking your white blood cells, the cytoplasm, like the belly, the jelly in the middle. It's saying, hey, we got to get rid of you. So conventional thought is, well, your body's attacking your own white blood cells. There's too many of them. They're over-attacking your body. Your healing responses are out of whack. So these antibodies must be attacking your white blood cell, these neutrophils. My thought is, well, what if there's some kind of toxin, some kind of protein, something that your body is not able to digest, right? Neutrophils eat like Pac-Man, right? We call this phagocytosis. They eat, it gets into the belly, they digest it. But if your neutrophils, these white blood cells, can't digest this thing, perhaps your body is creating an antibody against what's in its belly, and the neutrophil is caught in the crossfire. That right there would prove that there's more to autoimmunity, that your body's not attacking your own cells, it's just a bystander effect. And if we can actually separate this, say, in a petri dish, and take these p-ANCA antibodies from someone with colitis and attach them with split the neutrophil, see what it goes after, the cell or what's in the belly. If we could do that, you could right away prove that this antibody is not an auto-antibody. And following this chain of events could dismantle a lot of what we currently see autoimmunity to be.
Yeah, I think there's truth in that, in the sense that when we think about autoimmunity, we sort of don't think that that's the intention. We think it's kind of the consequence, if that makes sense, right? The immune system doesn't have the intention of attacking itself, but it becomes a consequence of the immune system being activated in a particular way. And then either it's a white blood cell or it's a similar appearing, antigen on another cell or whatever that gets caught in the crossfire, right? And so to your point, if you can unravel the knot and not simply look at the symptom or what's actually being attacked, but look at what's actually under the attack occurring in the first place, if you will, right? Now you're actually starting to get to the root cause of the root cause here a little bit on this.
That's right.
Now you're starting to look at, okay, So maybe it is mold, maybe it is, heavy metals, or maybe it's something else. And there's things that have to be done to kind of detox this in a way that's safe and effective. I think that's what you're saying. So, yeah.
That's exactly it, right? The symptom is your body attacking something that is itself or is related to itself, but the root cause is still deeper. And this whole idea sort of came from the fact that human body isn't meant to have disease. It is remarkable how much innate intelligence our bodies have. There are hundreds of checks and balances and mechanisms to make sure your body does not attack itself. You have cells designed to attack cells that attack you. So why suddenly would it turn around and start firing on its own home team? Something else must be going on. And rather than accepting the common narrative that it just is what it is, or it's genetic or bad luck, we pulled back the curtain and said, what if? And I need access to a lab and a team. But if somebody wants to help me with this, I'll bet you would be nominated for Nobel Prize pretty fast. So feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. So pretty fascinating stuff. So why don't you share with the audience kind of where you're located? I think you're doing health coaching, if I'm not mistaken, around these issues. But why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I just want to preface, if it's an autoimmune condition you're coming with lupus, MS, etc., I will definitely refer you or help you find somebody. My specialty is right now, it's in the gut, Crohn's, colitis, severe IBS. And I wouldn't want to say, well, autoimmune disease, these are great theories, but I don't have practice in these niches. It's just the Crohn's, colitis, and IBS. So yeah, we work all over the world, Jeff. I mean, I'm located in Canada. We got clients in the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, parts of Europe. There's no country on earth we can't help. We do have challenges with India and the Middle East just because of accessibility. But ultimately, there's 1,001 ways to get help. We have a free podcast. We have a YouTube channel. We explain all of these things straight down to what it looks like, how it works, why your doctor's wrong, quite frankly, and what you can do instead. And it's all available all over the internet.
Nice. So what's the name of your podcast?
So I actually run two, which I realize gets confusing. The one we're actually to be seeing you on here soon, Jeff, I believe at the time of recording, I'll see you this week. It's called Reversible. That's reverse able, ABLE. Looks great on paper, play on words, terrible to have to say, but reversible. And this is where we have 2 episodes a week, one with an expert, somebody who's much smarter than I am talking about something that I don't understand. And then the second episode is a short, where I'll talk about how to reverse certain conditions, how to fix yourself, how to heal everything from bloat, acid reflux, rebuild your gut, whatever it is. We're a gut-focused podcast. And the second one that I have available is called Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally. And I started this because I was doing live teachings in my Facebook group. We got about 14,000 people there. And I was doing these every single week. And I thought, well, why don't we get them outside of the Facebook group and put them on the internet? So I just took those recordings. They're all available for free on this podcast, Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally.
Nice. Beautiful. No, I love it. Well, to your point, when you started the podcast, it's your own story of pain that's kind of led to your passion and your purpose here, right? So
it always is.
It's a common theme, right? We see it over and over again. But I think in many ways, it's a concept of being faced with a challenge, deconstructing it, understanding it, solving it, healing it, and then in some level, quite honestly, becoming grateful for it. You transcend it and become grateful because now you can actually help other people and share your wisdom. So I congratulate you on that course, right? I think a lot of people don't go through all the stages it takes to get to this place where you're actually helping other people, but that's a really inspiring trajectory that you're on. So it's great. Thank you.
Well, I'd love to revel in that. I'm awesome. But the truth is, I think every practitioner who's really worth their salt does go beyond theory. And I'm 100 and at the time of recording, 160 some odd episodes into my podcast. I would tell you probably 70, 80% or more of the specialists we brought in have had the very same pain to purpose story. And that's what drives us, because we've been there. We know better, and we can help save you the pain we went through in the decade or more of just figuring it out. We can help you get to a solution.
Yeah. But it's, I'm not just trying to blow smoke. I think, and it's really not about external validation either, to say something nice about your your course there. I guess what I'm doing is I'm relaying it to the audience as it's inspiring. And maybe as you're listening to this, think about your own pain. Think about the direction you can take, right, in terms of deconstructing it, understanding it, healing it, and then transcending it and making it a gift that you can give to other people. That would be the thought there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'd love to tack on to the end of that one, Jeff. I will tell you, whatever diagnosis you're dealing with, doesn't matter whether it's my niche, Crohn's, colitis, or something else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't actually exist. It's like the Matrix, there is no spoon. Your diagnoses, what your doctor does is they are trained to measure what's called diagnostic criteria. And it's often referred to as cookbook medicine. We say, here are your symptoms. Once you check enough boxes, we move you into the next one where we say, this is the condition you have, and your treatment, therefore, is this drug or that one in this order. And if that doesn't work, here's your surgery. Right. The problem is this gray area where if you don't meet enough of the boxes to get stuck into a diagnosis box, they don't know what to do. Well, we don't know what it is. It could be anything. Let's come back if it gets worse. Well, it's going to get worse. You're wearing a pair of shoes without socks. That heel's going to rub raw till it blisters and bleeds, gets down to the bone. Imagine if you dislocated your shoulder and your doctor went, well, not much we can do, but come back when your arm falls off. That would be downright insane. But we do this with disease conditions and illnesses and expect diagnostic clinicians like doctors to be able to get root cause approaches when it's not in their toolkit. No, so a diagnosis means nothing.
They were never trained that way. Yeah, no, that's right. It's so important to, as you're listening to this, to be asking the question, what's below this, right? What's beneath my symptoms? And then what's beneath that, if you will, right? And you have to dig like this. You have to go into it with that mindset. And there are enough people out there, like Josh, like what we do here in our clinic as well, where we're really focused on getting to the root cause of the root cause. And in some cases, the root cause of the root cause of the root cause, right? Which is aging itself. And so when you start to go and deconstruct it that way, you start to get really super fun, phenomenal results for people. And that's the joy that we garner, right? Seeing our clients do well. That's the greatest joy both of us have, I'm sure. So it's good stuff.
It is. It's a love and a passion.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And I guess I'll see you on the other side. So
I'm looking forward to it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. If you would like more information on what we've discussed or other topics, please reference the show notes or go to gladdenlongevitypodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching Gladden Longevity. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to get future episodes delivered to you and share our podcast or this episode with someone in your life that you may find benefit. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode. The Gladden Longevity Podcast is provided for informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The use of any information and materials linked to this podcast is at the listener's own risk.